Tucked deep in the Carpathian Mountains, hidden beneath decades of vines and silence, lies the forgotten Svitlohora Psychiatric Hospital. Officially shut down in 1989, the locals whisper it was never truly closed, just abandoned to whatever remained inside. Tourists rarely find their way to Svitlohora. The narrow road leading there is cracked and overgrown, with strange markings etched into the bark of trees. The villagers from nearby Kosmach say the ground around the asylum is cursed. The grass never grows right, and dogs refuse to walk past the rusted gate. The photographer. In 2023, an urban explorer and photographer named Ostap Dovbush ventured to the asylum, seeking photos for a documentary on Soviet-era psychiatric practices. He live-streamed his entry for his followers. The building's facade was decaying, with old medical charts and patient files still scattered across the floor. Faded portraits of Soviet psychiatrists watched him from cracked frames. The deeper he went, the worse it became. Rusted chains on beds, syringes fused with time, and names scratched into the walls, some with fingernails. But it was the sound that changed everything. First, the hum of fluorescent lights, even though there was no power. Then, a woman's voice crying in Russian and Ukrainian, begging someone to stop the injections. In one of the lower wards, Ward C, sealed with thick chains, Ostap heard knocking from inside. 3 knocks. Silence. Then 3 more. Suddenly, his live stream cut out. The final frame showed him turning toward the sound, his face pale with terror, as a shadow loomed from behind. Aftermath. Police searched the building for 3 days. They found his camera, but the SD card was melted, impossibly deformed. No sign of Ostap's body was ever recovered. Locals say his voice can still be heard on some nights, echoing from the ruins of Svitlohora, whispering words in a broken mix of Ukrainian, Russian, and something ancient. And if you ever try to visit the asylum, remember this: don't knock, don't answer, don't listen, because some patients were never cured, and some doctors never left. Part 2. The Lost Sister. A year after Ostap's disappearance, his younger sister, Katerina Dovbush, a psychology student at Lviv University, refused to accept that her brother was dead. She had studied every frame of his final live stream, analyzing the audio, the architecture, even the echoes. One thing haunted her most. Just before the footage cut, Ostap whispered, "Katya, run!" But how did he know she would watch it live? Convinced something supernatural or psychological had taken place, Katerina organized a trip to the Svitlohora asylum. Against the wishes of her professors and her parents, she brought only a voice recorder, a flashlight, and her brother's journal. The descent. Crossing into the mountains, she noticed the trees were still marked, the same sigils and Slavic protection runes, only now scratched over with something darker. Burn marks, claw marks. The gate was broken open. The chains had been cut from the inside. She entered Ward C. The air was heavy, reeking of mold and rusted blood. The flashlight flickered as if something was draining its power. On the recorder, she began to hear whispers. "She came back. Not cured. Not cured. She looks like him." Then, "Welcome, Katerina." She dropped the recorder. That voice, it was Ostap's, but slower, layered, like someone mimicking his voice behind a wall of screams. Room 43B. Using her brother's journal, she followed his exact path and reached the isolation wing. One room, 43B, was circled 3 times in red in his notes. Inside, she found a metal bed bolted to the floor and a mirror covered by a cloth. She pulled the cloth. The mirror didn't reflect her. Instead, it showed a room full of patients, all staring at her from the other side of a glass. At the center sat Ostap, with his back to her, hunched and whispering. "They showed me everything," he murmured. "They don't let you leave unless you bring someone else." Suddenly, the door behind her slammed shut. The mirror cracked. A hand reached through the glass and touched her shoulder. 1 week later, Katerina was found wandering the roads of Kosmat, barefoot, eyes glazed, whispering in Russian, Ukrainian, and a third language no one recognized. The only thing she kept saying was, "Room 43B. Don't open the mirror. It's not a mirror. It's a door." Part 3. The Door That Watches. 2 months after Katerina was found, she was transferred to a private psychiatric clinic in Ivano-Frankivsk. No diagnosis seemed to fit. She spoke fluently in languages she'd never studied, drew blueprints of non-Euclidean corridors, and screamed violently whenever someone showed her a mirror. The case caught the attention of Professor Markian Hordienko, a former parapsychologist turned skeptic, now lecturing at Kyiv University. He had built a reputation debunking haunted sites. But Katerina's drawings and the tape of her whispering in a long-dead Carpathian dialect shook something in him. He decided to investigate Svitlohora Asylum himself. Preparation. Unlike Ostap and Katerina, Markian came prepared. Geiger counter, infrared cameras, mirror-covered helmet to avoid accidental door contact. A journal from a Soviet doctor once stationed at Svitlohora. The journal included a note. "Room 43B is not for the mentally ill. It is a prison for a voice. Not human, not old, not young. It waits behind the glass. Do not let it see you." The return. Markian reached the asylum on November 1st, All Saints' Day. The halls were colder than expected. His Geiger counter clicked wildly around Ward C, but calmed down near room 43B, unnaturally silent. The door was still ajar. Inside, the mirror was gone. In its place was a gaping hole, perfectly square, the edges sizzling as if freshly cut. Though untouched for months, he set up a camera and lowered a microphone into the hole. Static. Then, "Markian, you brought the key." He turned, confused. The camera behind him had stopped recording, but in the reflection of his helmet visor, he saw it. A man. No eyes, no skin, wearing Ostap's jacket. It didn't move, just stood there, watching, breathing backward, in as he breathed out. Then a voice spoke from inside Markian's own mind. "You don't believe in us. That's why we chose you. Open the way." The hole behind him began to whisper. The floor pulled in like breath. The tape recorder played distorted audio of Katerina's scream from months ago. Markian ran. Out of the room, out of the building. He didn't stop until he reached his hotel, but when he opened his bag that night, the mirror was inside, whole, polished, waiting. Final notes. Professor Markian was last seen 3 days later, wandering the streets of Lviv, pressing broken mirrors into the hands of strangers, saying, "Don't face it directly. Don't let it see you seeing it. That's how it learns your name." He's now in the same psychiatric clinic as Katerina. In his cell, every mirror is covered, yet he repeats one sentence over and over. It's behind the glass, and the glass is everywhere.